In the opening scene of the film, Brian Mills, a former CIA agent, is trying to establish a relationship with his 17-year-old daughter, Kim. Kim lives with her mother Lenore, who is also Brian's ex-wife, and Stuart St. John, her new stepfather. The following day, Brian goes shopping for a karaoke machine and eventually buys one. He wraps it up and gives it to Kim on her 17th birthday, knowing that she has wanted to sing professionally ever since she was 5 years old. As soon as he gets to Kim's birthday party, the guard won't let him in, even though he tells him he's Kim's father. When Lenore arrives, she tells him that they are allowing the children to have their own area, then asks that he place the gift with the others. But Brian insists that he wants to give it to her personally. Soon after Kim arrives and opens her dad's gift, he takes a photo of her. Then her stepfather Stuart appears with an expensive horse as a surprise birthday gift. He looks sad as Kim runs away from him and towards Stuart's gift, leaving his gift behind. Then Stuart comes up to him and invites him to lunch. But he claims he only went there to wish Kim a happy birthday, then leaves that night. When Brian gets home, he adds the picture he took of Kim to his photo album. Then, his buddies who were also CIA agents show up with beer for their little barbecue party. They talk about Kim, Lenore, and Stuart after the party. One of them, Sam Gilroy, offers him a $2,500 job to bodyguard pop star Shira at her concert. Brian accepts the job, and his three friends leave. The following night, Brian shows up for work. Inside, Sam has tasked Brian with keeping watch. Before the concert starts, Brian asks Shira for advice on how to become a professional singer so he can tell his daughter. She responds by rudely telling him that she should choose a different career. Kim calls Brian during the show, and Brian excitedly tells her he's at Shira's show. Kim doesn't show much interest in what he's saying, then invites him to join her for lunch tomorrow. After the show, chaos breaks out when a backstage gate is opened. Brian rushes to protect Shira, but he has no idea that an assailant is lurking nearby, waiting to stab her. When he attacks, Brian uses his skills to take the man down and save Shira. While in the car, he offers Shira a soda to help ease the stress of the unforeseen attack. When Brian returns to the hotel to collect his pay, Sam tries to convince him to join the group, arguing that he is still the most talented fighter of all of them. Later, Shira wants to speak with him because she is thankful he saved her. She hands him a card with her vocal coach's number and her manager's number to help his daughter pursue her singing career. The next day, Brian sits at the restaurant with the card Shira gave her. Kim comes with Lenore, which surprises him because he thought just the two of them would be eating dinner. Kim tells him that she and her friend Amanda are planning to take a trip to Paris. But in order to leave the country, she needs her father's permission because she is still a minor. This also reveals that she only invited him to dinner to get his permission to go. Lenore then tries to convince him to allow her to go, by bringing out the paper and telling him to sign it. However, Brian says no, arguing that the world is too dangerous for a 17-year-old girl to travel across the world. Brian offers to let her go if he can travel with her. However, Lenore doesn't like this idea. It also disappoints Kim and she leaves before he can tell her about Shira giving him her contact information. Lenore tells him that he ruined their marriage, and made a mess of his life by spending too much time serving the country. Lenore tries to make him feel bad, saying he's not willing to sacrifice anything to make their daughter happy. He responds that while he would do anything for Kim, he doesn't feel comfortable letting her travel so far away. This makes Lenore angry, so she calls Brian pathetic and leaves. Later, Brian visits their home to tell Kim that he is giving her permission to go, but with 3 conditions. He says he wants the address and phone number of where she is staying, and if she moves, he wants to know her exact location and the people she's staying with. He also demands that she calls him when they arrive in Paris and each night before bed. Brian then gives Kim a cell phone that can make international calls and already has his number programmed in. Finally, he wants to be the one to drive her to the airport. Kim, who is overjoyed that he is allowing her to go, immediately calls Amanda to tell her the good news. He gives Kim a list of dangerous spots to avoid in Paris. She reassures him that they will be spending the majority of their time in museums, so he has nothing to worry about. Kim tells him she thinks he's paranoid because of his old job, but Brian disagrees with the claim and says that his career made him more aware. She then asks him to explain what exactly his job was, wondering why he was always away from home. He replies that he was a preventer, someone who works to stop bad things from happening. When they get to the airport, Brian discovers that Kim lied about where she was going. To his surprise, he learns that Kim and Amanda are not just visiting Paris together. Instead, they intend to explore all over Europe. When he tells Lenore, she is already aware of it. She says Kim couldn't be honest with him, because she feared he wouldn't have let her go if he knew. He is furious when Lenore continues by saying that they intend to follow a band that's on tour across Europe. She warns him that if he doesn't let Kim do what she wants, he'll lose her forever. They say their goodbyes, then Kim and Amanda leave for Paris. When they arrive in Paris, they meet an attractive young stranger named Peter, who offers to take their picture. After finding out where they are from, Peter offers to take a taxi with them because they are so expensive there. While this is happening, Brian is checking the flight status and finds that they have already landed at the airport, and that Kim never called him like she promised. Later, Kim and Amanda arrive at Amanda's cousin's apartment, where Kim learns that Amanda's cousins are not home because they're currently in Spain. Kim warns her to be cautious since they don't know Peter, but she confidently tells him they have the whole apartment to themselves. She whispers to Kim not to worry because Peter is handsome. After he walks away, Peter makes a phone call in which he reveals that he plans to kidnap both girls. As soon as they enter the house, Amanda tells Kim she's going to sleep with Peter tonight, and teases Kim about losing her virginity to one of his friends. They crank up the music and start dancing. Meanwhile, Brian has tried calling Kim multiple times with no response. Brian then calls Lenore, who rudely tells him to give her some time to herself before hanging up on him. However, he continues calling until Kim picks up. Brian tells her she was supposed to call him when she landed, and he was worried that the phone he gave her wasn't working. Kim says it was too busy at the airport so she couldn't call, and he demands the phone number of the hotel she is staying at. Kim says she doesn't know the number, and also reveals to him that Amanda's cousins aren't there, even though she promised they would be. Kim notices men entering the residence and kidnapping Amanda. Then tells her dad, "Someone is here." Brian begins recording the conversation right away, while asking Kim if they met anyone since they got there. She replies that they had met a man named Peter at the airport, also that he knew where they were staying. Brian tells his daughter to stay focused and listen to everything he tells her. He then orders her to count the number of intruders before sending her to the next bedroom to hide under the bed. Then he adds that although they will take her, she will have between 5 to 10 crucial seconds. He tells her to leave the phone on the floor, and to shout everything she notices about them while they take her. When the two men drag her out of hiding, she follows her father's instructions. She yells, "Moon and star tattoo right hand, beard, 6 foot." Brian then can hear a man pick up the phone and start listening. He says he doesn't know who they are or what they want, but if it's money they're after he doesn't have any. He warns him by saying, "What I do have is a particular set of skills that I've acquired over a long career, and these skills make me a nightmare for people like you." He assures the man listening that if the kidnappers release his daughter, he won't pursue them, but he warns him if they don't let her go, "I will look for you, I will find you, and I will kill you." The call is cut off after the man simply says, "Good luck." Later, Brian dashes to Stuart's home to break the bad news that Kim was abducted while in Paris. Stuart is given directions to prepare a plane for Brian to go to Paris as soon as possible. Sam, a longtime friend and former co-worker of Brian, calls him to evaluate the recording of the call, revealing that the kidnappers speak Albanian based on their accents and dialects, and they must be natives of Trăbaha. Additionally, he notes that the person Brian spoke with was identified as Marco Hoxha, a known mob boss who recently relocated to Paris. He also states that the tattoo serves as a form of group identification, and that this group is known for trafficking young women. After smuggling the women, they turn them into drug addicts and turn them into prostitutes. If Kim cannot be found within the next 96 hours, she will most likely go missing forever. Brian flies to Paris right away, while replaying the recording of his daughter being taken. He finally arrives, then enters the apartment by walking on the side of the building and breaking a window. After discovering Kim's broken phone, he attempts to recreate what took place there. He removes the memory card and sees Peter's reflection in a picture. Additionally, he discovers Peter pursuing a female traveler at the airport. So Brian tries to capture him and brings him into the taxi with him. He demands to know the whereabouts of the 2 American girls they took yesterday. He continues beating him until he is pulled out of the taxi. Brian knocks out the man, then notices Peter is running away. Brian quickly chases after him, but Peter jumps off a bridge, then is killed by a truck he didn't see coming. This means that his only lead is dead. Brian reaches out to an old friend, Agent Jean-Claude Pedro, a former French intelligence agent who now works in an office. He is told about the red light district in his community, where an Albanian prostitution ring is active, but Jean cautions him against getting involved. He also tells Brian he can't just run around Paris killing people, but Brian responds that he will tear down the Eiffel Tower if that's what it takes. After learning this, Brian employs an English-Albanian translator. He approaches one of the prostitutes at the port and bothers her until someone approaches him. The man threatens Brian to leave his prostitutes alone because he is costing him money. He demands $50 from Brian for the trouble, which he hands over, but also secretly puts a device on the man to spy on him. After realizing that they are conversing in Albanian, he turns to the translator for an English translation. After that, the translator says everything they say until Brian gets a hint about a building site. Brian immediately goes to the building site only to find that the area is a nighttime prostitution den. Brian investigates the room filled with drug prostitutes. Then he eventually finds a woman who has Kim's jacket next to her. He asks her where she got it from, but the woman is so drugged she doesn't understand him. A man grabs Brian from behind, so he uses his fighting skills to beat the man until he's knocked out. The noise from this attracts more men, and Brian goes on a rampage, taking them out one by one. He shoots a man, which alerts everyone that something is wrong, so he grabs the girl and helps her into a car to escape. This turns into a shootout between him and the traffickers, who are all now firing at him. Now in a high-speed chase with the owners of the brothels, he maneuvers around them, flipping their cars, ramming into them, and sending them crashing into equipment on the site before crashing through a building to escape. Later in a hotel, Brian helps the woman detox from all of the drugs she had been given. The woman eventually wakes up, so Brian asks her how she got Kim's jacket. The woman explains she thought she was going to a party when she was kidnapped. She remembers the house had a red door and was called Rue de Paradis. This is where she met Kim and was given her jacket. Brian finds the place quickly. He enters the house under the disguise of deputy director, using Jean's name card, claiming he wants to renegotiate the police protection rate. Brian tricks one of the men into translating a piece of paper that says, "Good luck." This reveals that this is the same man Brian talked to on the phone when his daughter was kidnapped. This enrages Brian when he realizes, so he goes on a killing spree, stabbing and shooting the men in the room to death. When more men rush to the room to help, Brian is pretending to be dead. Then he fires his gun and continues on his rampage, killing all of the scumbags inside the building, who are all no match for Brian's incredible fighting talents. He goes upstairs to try to find Kim in one of the rooms, but she's nowhere to be found. This is when he sadly finds Kim's friend Amanda dead in one of the rooms. Later, he tortures Marco with electricity until he gives him information to help him find his daughter. Marco explains that virgins like Kim sell for a high price on the black market and are quickly sold. He tells him that they sold her to St. Clair Petrie. Brian turns on the electricity before leaving Marco, who is electrocuted to death. After connecting what Marco told him to Jean, Brian visits his apartment to confront him about his corruption. When Jean realizes Brian is in his home, he immediately grabs a gun from inside his bathroom, then sits down for dinner. Brian exposes him for helping traffic the women for money, which angers Jean, so he tries to kill Brian, but he had removed all of the bullets from his gun before he got there. Brian then shoots his wife in the arm, then threatens to kill her if he doesn't tell him where to find his daughter, so he tells him where to find her. Later on that evening, Brian shows up at the gathering dressed as a cop. However, the guard informs him that because his name is not on the list, he is unable to pass. Brian points a gun at the guard, forcing him in the elevator and knocking him out. Then, he enters the auction disguised as a waiter and makes his way to a private room where bids are being placed on women. The last girl is set to be auctioned, starting at a price of $100,000. When the girl walks out, it is revealed to be Kim. Brian then points his gun at Charlie, demanding that he buys her no matter how much it costs. He eventually buys Kim for $500,000, so Brian quickly forces the man to retrieve his daughter. But as they leave the room, Brian is knocked out by a backhand blow to the head. When Patrice discovers who he is, he gives his goons orders to quietly kill Brian because they have guests. However, Brian snaps the pipe that he is handcuffed to as he is about to be killed. This fills the room with smoke and he begins killing all of the men. He shoots the last man, which makes Patrice angry since he told his men to kill Brian quietly. This is when Brian busts open the door and shoots his man before approaching him and shooting him. Patrice begs Brian not to kill him because he has a family, but Brian finds out his daughter was sent to a yacht and executes Patrice with multiple gunshots. Brian rushes to find the boat, then jumps onto it from a nearby bridge and takes down one of the guards. Brian continues by throwing another guard overboard, and stealthily killing multiple other guards before shots are fired, alerting the rest of the guards. Brian comes out of nowhere and shoots another guard, then dodges incoming bullets by jumping through a window. He shoots another man in the foot, dropping him to the ground then killing him. Then Brian is shot in the stomach, but tackles the last guard through a window and they begin viciously fighting each other. This fight goes on for a while until Brian stabs the man to death. Brian walks through the door to find the rich pervert who bought his daughter holding her at knife point. He confidently takes the shot, instantly killing the pervert and saving his daughter. They have an emotional embrace now that the nightmare is finally over. They return to their American homes the following day. At the end of the film, Brian takes Kim on a surprise visit to Shira because she is eager to hear her voice.